In a survey by the Public Religion Research Institute, when people claim to be Christian and commit acts of violence in the name of Christianity, do you believe they're really Christian or not? 90% of evangelical Christians said no, those people were not Christian. Only 57% of them, however, believed that when asked the same thing of Muslims, that they were actually doing things in the name of Islam and they were proper Muslims. So this special exception that evangelicals gave themselves doesn't apply to other religions and ideologies. And why does this matter? Well, how can you critique an ideology when anything that has been done in its name is sort of hand waved away this easily? What an easy way to let yourself off the hook for the vile and evil things that are said and done in the name of your faith. And this idea that Christianity is innocent of everything, every crime that's been done by its adherents, I find that ridiculous and completely untenable. So if you are one of those no true Scotsman Christians and this upsets you, then give us a call because the show is starting now. Well, hello, I am Sofia Spina, and today on May 26th, 2024, I'm hosting and joining me is the lovely Blind Limey.
Hello there. Finally, the fruits of the next generation atheist anti-apologist project have come to fruition. That's right, we're not real people. We were cloned from a collection of cells gathered from other atheists. You know the ones.
And this is what they came up with, which I love. So yeah, I'm actually really excited. I also feel like, full disclosure, I'm like a skosh intimidated because I feel like you're just so smart, and I'm like, all right.
No, it's 97% the accent.
That's true. I just have the most, it sounds almost Midwest. It's so meh. That's how I view my own accent. It's not very exciting.
I'm either intellectual or a Star Wars villain. The rebels, sir, they're here, and they've brought a flag. Anyway,
in children's cartoons, there's like the hardy American character with my accent who's like the leader a lot of the time. And then there's the, the British character who's always like the smart one. And then there's a Southern character who's just really nice and hardworking. Like there's always kind of that trope.
Sure, we're gonna get her done.
Yeah, I know. And they're just like, their name's always like Bubba or something, I'm like, this is not very helpful, I think, for kindergartners watching this who may share one of these accents and just, I guess I'm just one of these folks. Yeah. Oh my goodness. I feel like this is going to be a good time. So, Talk Heathen, just so you all are aware, is a product of the atheist community of Austin, a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to the promotion of atheism, critical thinking, secular humanism, and the separation of religion and government. So Talk Heathen is a live call-in show, and we have open lines. So you can call and talk to us. You don't have to argue with us about something. We can also just, wax poetic on something you're dealing with, an idea you had, or whatever it might be. And yes, get your calls in at 512-991-9242 or call from your computer at tiny.cc/CALLTH or tiny.cc/callth. All right, we have a question of the week with Talk Heathen to me. First, it is time for our Talk Heathen to me I just said that. I feel like the need to break the fourth wall here for a second and be like, I'm still getting used to the hosting, how we go and reading the document as we continue. So
it's perfectly fine. It's not like there's hundreds of people looking at you now.
I know. This is why I feel like I have to look kind of cute because I'm like, maybe they'll forgive me if I just put on camouflage.
Like cute goes a long way. But anyway,
I have noticed that. Yes, I'm gonna go with that.
What heathen talk to me does we has?
Yes. So last week we asked you, what is the real reason Objectively Dan bailed? And we have our top 3 answers here, which I can go ahead and rattle off. I feel like that's the way this one heads. All right. So number 3, we have Nidza Pacina. I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong. Objectively, Dan bailed because he thought he was getting too objectified on these shows. Oh, man.
I mean, he does have a very, very nice jaw.
He really does. And I wonder, part of me is like, oh no, I think I might have actually been, if this were the case, I might have been part of the problem. Yeah, I feel like the more pregnant I get, the more wild things I say. So that's, oops. Number 2, we have from Dustin King. We have, unless it's Dustin King, in which case I'm pronouncing it wrong. Dan missed the show because he woke up with bite marks on his neck and an aversion to going out in the sun. I love it. I mean, clearly a very scientific explanation, right?
I mean, he didn't eat much of the garlic bread when we went for the pizza that one, so I don't know.
And anyway. He doesn't like crosses, obviously, as an atheist. No, yeah. So, we got... I think we've stumbled upon something, Dustin King. Well done. And number 1, we have Chuck Gados or Chuck Gadus. I'm not sure either one. Objectively, Dan bailed because McDonald's brought back the McRib, and it doesn't look good for a vegan to show up with barbecue sauce on his mouth and fingers. That's amazing. I feel like.
I tell you what, though. The McRib is like 80% the sauce and the onions. I think you could make a decent one out of tofu. I honestly do.
Or you could just dip onions in sauce and just.
Or you could just drink like a pint of the sauce. Just chug the sauce.
There you go. I love the idea that the McRib would somehow be the ultimate takedown for vegans. Like they just can't.
They can't stop it.
It gets them exactly, and McDonald's knows this somehow. I think that's amazing.
I could do something very out of pocket. Let's say, because one of the things we do on the show, not to interrupt too much, is you can super chat
interrupt
us.
As much as you want. I love it.
You can send us super chats, as long as they're appropriate, and we will read them. But if you do, of a certain amount, which I won't disclose, I will judge it. I will drink straight barbecue sauce from the bottle on camera for you because I have no shame. But anyway.
That I feel like people should. I love that. I hope your tummy would be okay. I feel like that's one thing I would be concerned about, just making sure you feel good after that one. But so there you go. Jamie the Blind Limey will drink barbecue sauce straight from the bottle if you give a good enough amount of a super chat.
An amount that I judge to be enough.
Yeah, an enough amount. I'm sure that he aims to satisfy, so I'm sure it'll be plenty. So the prompt for next week's Talk Heathen to Me segment is, why is God so obsessed with sex? Wrong answers only. What I feel like you had one for this. Yeah. Jamie, what was your take on why God is so obsessed with sex?
Just that it must be frustrating to be the only sentient thing in the universe that can't.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking about that too. There's sort of some incel vibes here with God, that you can't, I mean, he'd have to have genitalia, which...
Well, we are made in his image, but then again, does that mean that he's a hermaphrodite? No, ribs. Yeah, that was it. Speaking of ribs... But Eve was made from a McRib. No, sorry,
Eve was made from a McRib. That is my new favorite thing. Yes, I love that. I feel like I would have to wonder, like, can God have sex with himself? Would be... Is that...
Well, he's all powerful. We're getting into territory here that's making my
Would it
skin
be
crawl.
Within the bounds of wedlock and holy matrimony if he did that?
Can God create an orgy too big that he can't participate? I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. It's Sunday and it's 1 o'clock.
I feel like this has started off in a wonderfully heathen and sacrilegious way. It does remind me of in The Simpsons the sacrilegious.
Sacrilegious. That's about right.
I should get that put on like some booty shorts, like across the back. Just sacrilegious.
In rhinestones, sparkles.
Yes, definitely. Anyway, sorry, this is off the rails already.
We're so far into the weeds, you can call us a weed whacker.
Oh my goodness. So the prompt for next week again is, why is God so obsessed with sex? Wrong answers only. Enter your best comment or your best answer below this video in the comments, and next week we will reveal the top 3 answers. So we have Jamie's answer, which is that it's just got to be frustrating to not be able to participate. And yeah. So we'll see what you all come up with next week. Definitely excited to see that. So we also have wonderful video and audio people, moderators, notes, and call screeners, and all sorts of things that go out to support this show. And so we want to thank the folks who are doing that. If we could go to the crew cam so we can see who that is. Yay! It's wonderful people.
For every person in front of the camera, there's like 5 or 6 behind it doing way important work, while we sit up here and flap our gums and say out of pocket stuff for no reason. So thank you, crew. Thank you, crew.
And they're all super nice and kind. And I think I just want to point that out too, that they're just lovely. And so, it's part of our privilege to kind of get to know them a little bit. Yeah. That we get to I don't know, do that.
Well, I say every time it comes up that I would still be a post C-virus hermit if it weren't for the ACA, if it weren't for the cast, the crew, the community literally telling me to get out of my house and come down the library. A wonderful bunch of people, everyone, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So something that we were, kind of talking today, I'm curious about your thoughts on the intro, the cold open that I sort of just threw out there about. It's this concept that the leader of the Public Religion Research Institute calls like Christian innocence. This idea that it's never actually a true Christian. It's very much a no true Scotsman fallacy. But I've heard even moderate Christians make this argument that, well, those people just claim to be Christian. The people who do X thing I disagree with just claim to be Christian. And I found that personally very frustrating when I'm speaking with someone and they go that route, because my first thought is, okay, but then why are you arguing with me about who a true Christian is instead of correcting the other people who are part of your faith? Like, that seems like it's much, that seems misdirected to me. But what are your thoughts on that?
Well, one of the things they can hide behind, and it's been the case for time immemorial, is sectarian issues. It's like, yeah, well, that's a Catholic thing, that's a Protestant thing, that's an Episcopal thing, that's a pre this part of the church thing that they can fall back on, even though they're all pulling from essentially the same book. But they're telling on themselves. Like, they're saying that their interpretation of the faith, that their interpretation of what is right and wrong is the correct one. But other people who profess to the same God, the same Jesus, almost the same doctrine, are wrong in some way, and therefore they can distance themselves from it. And as you were saying, moderate Christians, like, I believe in God and Jesus, but I'm cool and groovy and inclusive. I would counter with, that's fantastic, but if you truly are an empathetic person who wishes that their faith is there to help and love people only, then police your own. Like, you should be on the front lines with us, atheists and free thinkers, railing against the denigrations that come from these more extreme and fundamentalist sects of they are taking your God's name in vain to your thought. So instead of trying to defend yourself and saying, oh, wash my hands of it, it's not my type of Christianity, like, get on the lines with us and do something about it.
I feel like I very much identify with that frustration. And it's not that funny of a line from Bob's Burgers, but there's a moment when the character just says, I don't know why I'm getting yelled at, but that's how I tend to feel when someone's saying, well, they're just claiming to be Christians, like they're correcting me. And I'm like, I don't know why I'm the one who's getting this beef, who's getting yelled at about this. That doesn't really make a lot of sense. I feel like I have lost a lot of respect for moderate Christians that I really want to believe in when they do that, when they take this cop out. And I'm all for, challenge your own faith, the members of your faith you think are causing evil and causing harm, but that's so rarely what I see. And, there are a few folks I can think of, sort of Instagrammers and things who do that. They do tend to get lumped in with atheists, and people just sort of assume that, oh, well, they must actually be they're not a true Christian.
I have one in mind right now, a gentleman called Dan McLennan on TikTok. He's a Bible scholar, and he is, as far as I'm aware, a practicing Mormon, but he very much is a font of knowledge in the whole, no, the Bible doesn't say that. No, the Bible doesn't justify that. No, the historicity of the Bible does not allow you to make these sweeping statements, oh fundamentalist. Check the data. So I'm with you. And let us parlay this frustration into an acknowledgement and recognition and thanks to those religious people who, while we disagree with you, we still think that your reasoning is flawed because we don't agree with it, who are getting involved with things like championing the separation of religion and government, which is, of course, one of our missions here at the ACA. There are Christians and Muslims and Jews and all kinds of religious people who are properly fighting the good fight to make sure that while they recognize that they are allowed to have their faith, that it should not be pushed on other people, and there are certain parts of society that it should not go.
Mm-hmm. I recently, I'm in grad school, and I recently did a whole presentation on white supremacy, and white supremacy in therapy specifically was
fun.
Yeah, it was incredibly interesting. Definitely tough, definitely led to a lot of self-searching, to realize that some of the things I had believed had roots in white supremacy, and that I needed to also own that and explore that, which is uncomfortable. I'm the whitest person. So it's, if this is a problem, then it's my problem. I think my attitude toward white supremacy in that was, who can address this better than someone who has come from some of these beliefs, and no matter what I do, I will still look to a lot of folks as a representative of white supremacy just because of my physical appearance, including white supremacists. So it's my problem to deal with. And there are totally atheist white supremacists, by the way. This is a parallel I'm drawing, not an exclusive religious people or white supremacist kind of thing. But I think that I am confused when folks don't regard it as their problem to sort of clean out their own house,
I find that the Venn diagram of racism and white supremacy, atheism, and overlaps with libertarianism. It's basically just core selfishness. It's like me, and only me, and anyone who isn't me or isn't like me can go away, and no one can tell me what to do, be it government or God. So, yeah, there are people out there who may nominally agree with us on the topic of whether a God's real or not, who we thoroughly do not agree with on a lot of other things.
Yeah, I think that that's very, very true. And just as we don't want to lump ourselves into a particular bucket, we don't want to lump all religious folks into a particular bucket, but I do have separate questions for them. Like, what are you doing about this? As opposed to just saying, oh, shrug, I guess you're a nice Christian,
And I mean, again, it takes some courage to call us, and we do still have open lines. But if you are a moderate Christian watching these shows, perhaps for some catharsis on watching people fight against parts of people who profess a faith similar to yours that don't agree with you, call in and talk to us about how you square these things, square your faith with your ethics, because there are certain people out there who I very much respect and almost hold up on a pedestal. People like Stephen Colbert, Fred Rogers, all these people, but they are also defined by their faith. Like, Colbert is a Catholic. He's a practicing Catholic, but he also seems to be a cool guy that has cool ideas. Fred Rogers is an unassailably nice guy, but he was a Presbyterian preacher. I'm like, how can you be who you are while believing what you do?
I also find that to be a challenge to make sense of that. For me, Fred Rogers is a really big one, because part of why I even am choosing to kind of work in the mental health field is because of Fred Rogers and so much inspiration that I drew from him. There's a quote that he said that, like, the greatest thing we can do is teach people that they are loved and capable of loving. And for me, that quote is everything. And it's that I can love you, but also you are capable of loving others, that you are fully human. And I just thought that was so beautiful. It's hanging up in my son's room right now, actually, as a quote. And so making sense of the fact that someone that I draw so much personal inspiration from was a devout Presbyterian is interesting. I don't have a great answer for how all of these, squares can be circled, circles can be squared, whatever that phrase goes. But I also maybe feel like some of what's interesting about exploring this is that there are paradoxes, there are difficult things that I don't have perfect answers to. And so just as Jamie said, we have lines open. I'm going to plug that real quick with 512-991-9242 or visit tinycc/callth. You don't have to have every answer. I'm curious about how you make sense of this as an individual. I'm also curious about what I can learn from that, because I personally don't have perfect sense. Jim Henson was another person who I draw a ton of inspiration from. He was also religious, and that was definitely a big part of his life. Realistically, when we look at history, a lot of folks that I might draw inspiration from were religious just because a lot more people were part of organized religion when it was a bigger part of public and civic life. And like I said, I don't have perfect answers for that. What I do see often for myself is that a lot of the folks who I am inspired by religiously do not fit in with what I would see as a lot of modern American religion. And I think that they would be appalled by it too. My grandfather, toward the end of his life, he was a preacher forever. And toward the end of his life, he was a little lost at what he saw the Christian church becoming and wasn't really sure where he would fit into it. His belief was as strong as ever. And he was it's in the Bible, it's true kind of person. But he was lost in it. And going back and listening to recordings I made of him before he passed, they're all about love. And that's what he talked about, similar to Fred Rogers. And that's, I don't know, that's not something I feel like I'm hearing as much anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of the reason is that I can go into a whole rant on the slant that media puts on outrage and platforming of massive ideals. But I'm going to completely derail this conversation for just a moment because we got a super chat come in, and I want to read it because it's really funny. So we had Monkey at Typewriter gave us 2 of your American dollars to say, in Ari, Eve coming from McRib. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba, it's Genesis.
That's so good.
Yeah. I was like, I must read this. It's really funny.
I appreciate that you saying it. Also, that's singing on air.
Hopefully, we don't. That's less than 7 seconds. We're going to get copyright. We're not going to get a copyright strike for that.
Hopefully you're off key enough that it can't be copyright stricken.
I'm sorry, I always sing perfectly on key and I'm exceptionally good in the karaoke. And if you want to know if that's true or not, then buy your ticket for the Bat Cruise because karaoke might happen. No promises though.
Yes. Real quick, we have you mentioned the Bat Cruise, so it is time just about for our annual Bat Cruise fundraiser. Join us on August 24th. Forrest Valkai, J. Mike, Secular Rarity, and many other familiar faces will be in attendance. You can get more information and buy your tickets at tiny.cc/batcruise. That is tiny.cc/batcruise. I highly recommend going. I will not be there because I will have just pushed out a baby like a week before. So I will salute you from afar with my new tiny person.
Oh, the wonderful stories we could tell of the Bat Cruise. Like that one time that Redacted went to Redacted and put Redacted in Redacted. If you want to know what the actual story...
I can't be any of these redacteds also. Yeah. I'm totally a normal person all the time.
When Sofia gave me 3 Redacteds and I almost had a kidney stone.
What am I going to fill that in with?
you know what? This
You
Red
can
Bull
send in
is
a
always
super
tired.
chat with what you think I gave Jamie 3 of.
I just spoiled it, but no, it's
Nate, dang it.
it's a fantastic evening. I've had the privilege to go once. I'm going again this year, and I cannot wait. It's amazing.
Yeah, it is really fun. On that note, you know what else is fun? A caller. So let's bring on, we have John from Texas, who uses any and all pronouns, and who is arguing that God exists because time can't go back forever. Hey, John, can you hear us?
Yes.
Hello. So you're saying God exists because time can't go back forever. Tell us more about that.
Well, okay. So time, I think Richard, someone made a comment that time can go back forever. So or it can go forward forever, it can go back forever, like it can be infinite, backwards and forwards. But I think that the time cannot be infinite backwards or maybe even forwards, because what you're doing is conflating the whole concept of infinity is a mathematical concept. So it's kind of hard to imagine infinity and apply it to the real world, to either space or energy or time or anything like that. So, it's a mathematical concept. We can always think of a number that's bigger than any number we have at the moment. So that's sort of the concept of infinity, or is it as something goes to a limit, some function goes to a limit. So, but time is not like that. It's a created thing. So it can't go back forever. It can't go back.
How do you know that?
And the other thing is that, the arrow of time is entropy. Entropy gives us the arrow of time. So that's how we know we can't go time travel in the back. We can't go backwards.
John, can I just interject for a second?
Never mind.
John?
Yes.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
So,
yes.
do you know, or do you have insight that we're not aware of as to what occurred before the Planck time?
No. We don't know.
Nobody does. So the actual answer is not, it can't. The answer is, we don't know if it can. And therefore, we open it up to candidate explanations. So you have to justify now, John, why God?
Well, because time has a starting point. So in general, we have the start of everything, including time, energy, matter, space.
I don't know that that's something we can be for sure. Kind of going back to your analogy about infinity, and it's a mathematical concept and it's hard to understand, but it sort of means things can go on forever. The argument seems to be that we can't conceive of time going on forever, therefore it does not. And I would say that there are many things that I don't understand. I think I reference PBS's space-time quite a bit, but yeah, time gets weird at the outer reaches of the universe. Time is a descriptive thing we use to label how we experience life and I guess what we perceive as moving forward, but an inability to understand that it could be infinite does not equal an impossibility that it's infinite. How would you respond to that?
I'm not talking about understanding infinity. I think we can understand infinity in some concepts. We can always find a number. Take any number, we can always find a number that's bigger than that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's because numbers are abstract things. So
is time.
Infinity is definitely a concept. But now you want to apply it to material things or the universe, things that really exist, like time and matter and space.
Time is an abstract concept too. It's a way that we label how we experience moving through really our lives and how we label. I'm not really coming up with the perfect language here, but it's something that we use to describe an experience. It's not an objective reality on its own.
The reality we experience, the matter and dimensions that we are able to experience are intrinsically linked with time. It's space-time. They are not separate. They are two things. And all we truly know, all we can truly prove, is that space-time existed at the Planck time, and we can pretty much track the universe from then on to now. But since no one, you, I, or any physicist right now knows what happened before then, we have only hypothesis. And your hypothesis is coming to God, and ours is not. So what I would like to know is what evidences or arguments you have that your hypothesis is more likely to be true than ours.
Well, okay, so time is a funny thing. I mean, how do we measure time? We can only measure it in terms of space and some movement, right? That's the only way we can measure it, right? So,
it's why blank time exists. It is the smallest measurable amount of time before which or within which time as a concept doesn't make sense. So you're going to have to do a lot of work to get to God. So please enlighten us.
No, it's not that hard. We're already constrained by our language, right? We're always saying before time zero. Well, that doesn't even make sense. We're using a temporal word to convey something like in a temporal sense that doesn't exist. So that's. We are constrained. We're constrained by our understanding. That's absolutely sure. But if time goes back forever, it's like have we always had civilization on this earth? Can we have it forever? We have had civilization on this earth from time infinitely past. It's that sort of idea. And the answer is no. We don't have any evidence of that. We don't have.
That's a wildly different question, though, because for civilization to exist, there have to be quite a few precursors that we do know of and that we can describe. So we can tell you why civilization can't just go back forever, because the conditions of the earth were not habitable, because those of us who believe in evolution would say that there weren't really humans who would create civilization ultimately. We can give reasons for that. I think that's a very different question than whether or not time can last forever, because we don't know what a precursor or what would be necessary for that to happen.
You guys believe in a Big Bang, and Big Bang has a starting point.
Well, again, you say that, like, what I understand, I'm not a physicist, but I trust them, is that we can surmise the progression of the universe as a universal expansion, as Forrest Falco said, an everywhere stretch rather than a Big Bang, from this Planck time, from the earliest point we can measure. But before that, the concept of before doesn't even really make sense. So, yes, I believe that the Big Bang model is the most congruent to our current observations of the universe. But you inferring me saying that time existed before the Big Bang, I don't know. I literally don't know. Nobody does. And it's not even certain that anyone can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that looking at the Big Bang, it's this beginning of our iteration of a universe. I have no idea if it is the beginning of every universe or the only one to have existed. I think the idea that there was something pre the Big Bang, I'm very comfortable saying I don't know what that is, but I don't know why that necessitates God. Yeah.
It's the whole thing of like, John, have you seen the back of your own head with your own eyes without any other external assistance? No, it's not possible. It doesn't mean it's not there, but you need like a mirror or a photo or something. Perhaps there will be a time where we will have the technology or thought to be able to observe what happened before our universe instantiated. But we don't right now. And so in saying, therefore God, you are committing a fallacy that is God of the gaps.
Oh, stop with the God of the gaps. You guys have plenty of gaps too. So
yeah, but we don't fill them with bullshit.
I mean, I think that I just said I'm comfortable not knowing. Yeah, there's a gap, but I'm not trying to say that I do know when I don't have any evidence and I would just have to make it up. Yeah, I could believe Smurfette created the universe and then I wouldn't have a gap, but that isn't helpful.
So we know, hello? We know
Oh, yeah.
the universe is running downhill. We know that. That's irrefutable. That's what gives...
What do you mean by running downhill?
It's all the stars are burning out. It's all going to a low energy state. All concentrated energy areas are being dissipated. The entropy is increasing, monotonically increasing. That's the death of the universe.
Yeah, at least as far as I'm aware, that entropy is a thing. Yeah, okay.
Is what?
Entropy is a thing. Yes, the heat death and all that. Yeah, go on.
Entropy is a thing. Absolutely is a thing.
He's not arguing. He agrees with you. He's saying, continue.
It's like one of the most fundamental concepts in physics, of course.
Yeah, I'm still not seeing God.
So
entropy gives us the arrow of time. It gives us the arrow of time, and it says we can't go back in time because never mind the contradictions of going back in time. Just that the arrow goes forward. There's only one way. Entropy is always increasing in the universe. So that gives us, you can only go back so far to have a starting point, and we don't know what happens before that. So how does this all get started? I mean,
supposing this is all true, I don't understand why it would lead us to God instead of a question of I don't know. And I also I don't know enough about physics, and I'm feeling like there's this little bit of a gap here for me, which makes me feel like I need to go back and research. I'm not sure what you're saying about entropy always being true all the time in the universe is true. Simply because I'm not an expert in that. But even if all of that is true, it still leads us to this question of why God, and particularly why this God and why not Smurfette, you know?
Actually, here's an interesting question, John.
Well,
could you define your God? What are the properties of the God you believe exists?
Well, it's the God of the Bible.
Well, we already know that the Bible story of the creation of the universe is factually completely fucking wrong. Light came after the earth. It's wrong from the start.
It's wrong because what?
From the very start, the description of the creation of the universe or of the world as portrayed in Genesis, and I've read Genesis and noted it, is wrong. It's incorrect. So if you're taking the God of the Bible to be true, then whoever wrote down what he did it wrong.
You're so sure of that, huh? So what you're buying into is the basic cosmology, the current cosmology of the Big Bang. And the Big Bang cosmology has certain assumptions that went into it. And those assumptions determine the results of that theory. So
how did we arrive at those assumptions? I think that maybe the question of how do we arrive at biblical assumptions versus how we arrive at scientific assumptions might be worth exploring. I think that's a really big question. We also have a comment here from Kelley, who's our resident geologist, who said, entropy only happens in a closed system, and we don't know that the universe is a closed system. So I think we kind of end up with this issue where we have the same issue when we go outside into the greater reaches of the universe that we do when we try to reach back into the past before the Big Bang, which is that our knowledge is inherently extremely limited. So drawing conclusions from it seems like a bad idea.
Yeah, our knowledge, of course, it's extremely limited. We're talking about an awesome God, a God that creates hundreds of billions of galaxies. And hundreds of billions.
I mean, we don't have to be talking about an awesome God, and our knowledge is still limited simply because we are apes who are trying to understand the universe.
It's a God, I'm positing, as an explanation that created the hummingbird and the horse.
Yeah, it's an explanation, but it's not a very good one. I could explain it by saying a giant ethereal dragon shat the universe into existence. It's an explanation, but it's one with no backing, no evidence, and doesn't make logical sense. So if you say God, You're going to have to give us more evidence, more compelling evidence than we have for the Big Bang Theory. And we have a lot of evidence of the Big Bang Theory, things like the mere existence of uranium or lead, heavy elements. The mere existence of the element lead goes to prove us, and Kelley may be able to back me up on this one. Lead exists only because the universe is fucking old as shit, right? It's really, really old because lead decays from heavier elements that were only created after the early stars supernovaed and the fusion of the lighter elements became the heavy elements. And that's just one thing. Then we've got universal background radiation. We've got loads of stuff, redshift, all these principles that point us towards a universe that started at a singularity point at a certain time and then expanded. And so you're saying we make assumptions, maybe a couple of little ones, but there's a mountain of evidence to back those all up. What evidence do you have that isn't a 2,000-year-old book?
Well, you have all these complex biological systems that are incredibly complex that we don't even have an understanding them. And any gradual change in mutation or whatever selection process, just mathematically, is not sufficient to do that. And the whole field of evolution is now from that. But never mind that.
Yikes.
Never mind.
Yikes. No. We're not going to never mind that. Just bringing up irreducible complexity. That's a really common argument, right? And it operates from the assumption that how we view something right now is the way that it always must have been. So if we take apart one piece of the eye or something like that, then it won't work. Therefore, God. That's the basic premise of irreducible complexity, which is, first of all, not typically true. And second, we can see many steps along the evolutionary pathways that we do know of that can lead to something as complex as an eye or a little micro motor system that I know that Michael Behe loves to argue for. I think that, so I actually used to be an irreducible complexity person because back in my Christian-y days, I was very involved with that group of people who tend to lead this movement, oddly enough. And what I realized in hindsight is the more I learned about evolution, the more I learned that this is not, the irreducible complexity is a very shaky argument simply because it relies on you as an individual not knowing very much about how evolution actually works and very much about how we can gradually evolve over time. Also, you're mentioning that the math doesn't work out, and that simply isn't the case. We can also observe evolution happening directly through things like either bacteria or even how a species may change over the time we've been recording it. So I think the reason I would say, no, we're not going to never mind that is because, to me, it's a bit of a kick in the stomach of, this is where you're coming from. You haven't really been exposed to a lot of the information we do have about evolution. And most folks who are arguing for irreducible complexity are doing so because then they have an argument for getting religion into science class. It's not an inherently non-political ideology. It's one with an end in mind, and that requires ignoring a lot of evidence. So, yeah, I feel like we're not going to just push that under the rug,
okay.
You know?
Can I talk now for a few seconds?
Of course. I've been letting you this entire time, sir.
All the evidence, we agree that all the evidence for evolution is circumstantial.
Sorry,
Okay.
sorry. I should take you more seriously, John. But that's a wild thing to say.
Yeah, Jamie, go on ahead, actually.
Okay, so here's my point. So, John, we are on the internet. Yes, we are.
Whoa. You can't just insult me and then go talk over me. Let me.
No,
Okay,
I'm not insulting you. I'm saying that what you said was wild. I said nothing about you. The statement you made was wild.
Hey, I think that maybe this call has run its course if we're gonna get into that space. And so I am gonna drop you, John. Feel free to call back at a different time when maybe this isn't the feelings that are coming up that are big. Something I'm gonna comment right here is that you laughed in a way that he had been laughing kind of the whole time, and then he became very upset about it.
Yeah, I will actually, no, I will apologize for it. That was not very professional of me to do that. I should keep my calm a bit more. But it is laughable because my point is, and my point I was going to make to him before it all went horrifically wrong. So we're on the internet. Like we are using advanced technology to communicate. We have so many wonderful things in medicine and engineering and stuff. The methodologies that allow us to do what we're doing right now are the same types of methodologies and thinking patterns that brought us to things like Big Bang cosmology and the theory of evolution. So why are you happy to completely trust the scientific method when it gives you acetaminophen and Google, but not when it gives you, evolution and Big Bang cosmology, because it doesn't fit your narrative? Like trust the you trust the process most of the time, but not when it's inconvenient for you. That's my big issue with these kinds of anti-intellectual arguments.
Yeah, I think that I also I have empathy for people who do feel things strongly and get a little bit over their head by making claims that they've heard others make, which is sort of the sense that I have of what was happening here. I think that when we start relying on accusing someone else of being inherently disrespectful of us, when I really genuinely don't feel like that's what was happening, I think our arguments run its course. I think that when we're becoming really reliant on just, now I'm going to be angry and say you were talking over me, I don't really know what the expectation is now for where this conversation is going to go. So that's why I kind of respectfully feel like I don't want people to feel like that is our intention here. At the same time, I think that when someone is making a lot of arguments in a short period of time, part of what we like to do is break them down and ask, how do you know that? That's how I, at least, and I'm assuming you, came to a lot of our own beliefs, is breaking these arguments down. So yeah, but we can move on because we have another caller. And I'm going to bring in, we have Jeff, him from Texas, a lifelong atheist, still looking for atheist community. I would argue you've found the right place. Can you hear us, Jeff?
Yes, I can. I'm sorry. Give me a moment. I'm going to take it off speaker. You told me not to do that.
We appreciate listening to the direction of the call screeners. That's probably good.
Good man.
Yeah. Imagine that. Imagine that. I was raised without religion at a time when I'm retired, but at the time I was coming up in grade school, there would be, Wednesdays, I remember the first time they had us line up. Well, I don't really remember. I remember what my mother told me about it. They apparently made people line up, Protestant or Catholic, and then they would take the kids to whatever that place was. And I went a few times. Well, they called my mother because they thought maybe I was Jewish. My last name sounds a little Jewish. And no, my mom said, just do anything, but don't send them to the Catholics, whatever you do. Okay. So she always identified as an atheist. And she told me about my great grandfather was actually, I came to find out through what he had said and what my mother had told me about him. I don't know that she ever heard the name Ingersoll, but the expressions of what he had, about how when you die, you go into the earth and your grass grows up and flowers from you, and better to live a life. The things that Ingersoll, I read a lot of Ingersoll stuff. He sounded very much like he was part of that, since he grew up, or his formative years were in the last part of the 18th or 19th century, I guess. Yeah. So At any rate, the point was, like when I went there, my experience was I didn't really like it. I was confused a lot, and I was like, look, I don't want to go. So my mom talked to the school, and apparently it was a big fuss, but because they had to have a teacher sit with me back at school. And so then I got to stay at school and I just drew pictures and stuff and read, and there was no trouble for anybody, but, so I've always been an atheist, but most of the atheists I meet are people who've had to struggle to overcome either a family that kind of really tried to force them to believe, or they feel that they were oppressed. And I find that when I have found groups to sit and talk or have lunch with, they're great people, but that seems to be a common thread, with everyone. And I haven't really met anybody else who kind of has an experience like mine.
Oh, I'm similar. I mean, ironically, having grown up in a country with a state religion, going to a public school that did religious things, I never believed. I was never expected to believe. I was never forced to go to any kind of religious event. We sang hymns in assembly, but they were just songs. We had a prayer in assembly, but it wasn't enforced. We just sat in silence for a minute. So yeah, I was never expected to be religious, and I understand that imposter syndrome when you are surrounded by people who have had to fight their way free of what can be very deeply ingrained trauma and psychological conditioning. Many people at the ACA, many co-hosts that I've worked with, have had to go through that, and you do sometimes feel a bit like a fraud, like, oh, I didn't have to deal with any of that. I've never believed in God, and that's always the way it's been. But not to speak on behalf of those, and maybe Sofia will chip in with her experience, but they still are going to appreciate your allyship, and you can be an anchor for people, especially those who are still deconverting, still questioning, because you are the blank slate. You are the untarnished soil. You are unmarred by these doctrines. And you go, yeah, none of it makes sense. Trust me, I've never done it. So let's talk.
I love that. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, my mother, the other part of it, she explained to me that they described it as, they said, line up Protestants and Catholics, and I had no clue what the hell they were talking about. Well, what church do you go to? I don't know what you mean. I didn't understand. To me, it was all, I'm supposed to be part of some club, and I don't have a clue what they're talking about. I was just very uninterested in it, and even afterwards, I didn't feel like that was it was like, oh, okay. I said I didn't really want to do that, and they accommodated me. I mean, I didn't think of it that way, but I thought of it like, oh, okay, I have to do that, and that was it. I never felt like that was oppressive. It was just like, good. I said I didn't want to do that, and they were cool with it, so I got to draw pictures. And the funny thing about it was, after that, I was the only one for a few weeks, and then there was 2 and then 3 of us. So apparently somewhere the word got around, but we never discussed what we were missing out on, or that was never, as kids, we just played together, and it was never a thing. Nobody ever really got down on me for it or mentioned it again. It was just, but I do find, like, in moving through life, there are people who would sometimes ask, and I was like, well, I'm not, and some people who would say things like, a lot of people who went through the oppression and stuff, or family pressure, they would say things like, well, I'm an agnostic, and I just, well, of course, nobody knows, because you haven't been there yet. You haven't been dead yet, Like,
I really appreciate.
Well, I'm an atheist. I always felt comfortable with saying I'm an atheist, because I think that's the most accurate.
I think I appreciate so many things about your story, in that there are religious people around, but you didn't feel pressured by them. that you had to participate, aside from the inherent pressure of just telling kids to line up with something that they don't, understand at that point.
The connotations of separating Protestants and Catholics has weight from the history I come from, but I digress.
I think that makes a lot of sense. That's true. Yeah. I grew up very differently than that. There would have had to have been a line for like Wiccans and New Age at my school too. So it's kind of this, which is a very different context. But I love that your mom was like, no, he doesn't have to do this, that she was involved and cared about your experience. And that sort of makes me happy. And then I think about, so I am from a family that has hundreds of years of religion and its involvement in religion fairly well documented. So I'm kind of more from that background where I was not nearly as abused as a lot of folks I know in religion. But there is a lot of anger when you come out of that. And I can see how if you don't identify with that anger, that could feel a little alienating, because people might say it's a chip on the shoulder, but really it's that you're allowed to be angry now. You're out, you're allowed to be mad and express that anger and find other people who also have that anger. So it becomes a little bit therapeutic for those of us who came out of a faith, but it's not everyone's experience. And more, I think that your experience is going to be more common. My husband actually was raised without religion, and some of what I describe going through, or even that I describe thinking now or following a thought process that I realize in hindsight still has remnants of religious thinking within it, as much questioning as I like to think I do, he just can't identify with, or he will point out that that's not anything he ever felt or anything he ever went through. And he also is from a country that actually has more government sponsorship of religion directly. And I love that for him, that he doesn't have that trauma. And I hope for my children, of which they're about to be 2, that that's their experience too, is that they don't end up with as much anger and as much sort of rehabilitation you have to do about your beliefs about people, your beliefs about yourself. I find it very hopeful. I don't know if that's your intention, but I appreciate you.
Yeah, and it seems to, whether or not you're a part of it, like going to church and that whole thing, there's a lot in the culture that sort of seeps in. Like when I told, my ex-wife now, and 4 children, I explained how I was thinking about, I'm retired now, 65, and I think about, what am I going to do about, am I going to be buried? Am I going to be cremated? Whatever, right? I'm like, gosh, what do you do? How do you dispose of this body? And so I've talked to somebody who does like natural burials, and even that has so much spiritual, if you call it that, I put air quotes around that, overtones to it. People that are like, they're all into more of the new age thing of your body going back to the earth, and that's true. But
not to just jump in on that. I would say so. A couple of things, Jeff. Just not to derail you, but once you're dead, let them do whatever they want. It doesn't matter. You're dead. Like, you're not going to know. You don't care. I find that funerals and funerary rites and all that kind of stuff, they're not for the departed. They're for the people they leave behind. And if the people that are left behind want to do something spiritual, unless you find it absolutely abhorrent, I don't see much in the way of harm.
I just regret that any money that I've saved to give to my kids as an inheritance would be wasted on. Oh my God! I've been through being an executor on my uncle, my dad, my mom, only child, and my spouse had gone through being the executor for both her mom and her dad, and I mean, I remember going with her. And like, for example, her mom had a pre-planning life insurance policy, right? And I was like, okay, well, the burial is this much, but the value of her insurance was this much. So what are you all doing? Writing a check or what? Well, no, we just keep that. What do you mean you just keep that? Where is that in the contract? And my wife had never thought about that. She's like, hey, yeah, why would you get to just, well, that's just what we do. Well, is that what, do people just donate? Did you give them a choice? Doesn't anybody ever ask about this? Well, honestly, we've never had anybody ask about it. Well, it's like,
if something concerns you, you can always look into it beforehand and set things up. There's such things as advance directives and living wills and things like that. So, I understand that you feel like that your wishes may be subsumed by spirituality or like predatory funeral directors and stuff, and that's a legitimate worry. But if you know it's coming, you can head it off at the pass. I would say, though, that right at the bottom, that I've wanted to say for the whole call is that, again, I want to repeat, your allyship is useful, your allyship is needed, and anyone who's going through or has been through a religious experience and is coming out of it will be happy to have you in their circle. And it's the same as don't feel like because you haven't had the experience you can't be helpful. I have that same thing, especially when it comes to things like LGBT allyship, which is something we're aligned with here at the ACA as well. I am so straight and so white and so cis. I am unbuttered white toast when it comes to these things. But one of the things I always champion is empathy. You don't have to be someone. All you need to be able to do is feel with them. And if you can do that, world's your oyster, mate.
I can relate. My youngest daughter is, she quote unquote came out to me, and it's like, she's lesbian, and I'm like, okay, one, what makes you think we don't already know that? And two, what the heck are you talking about when you say you were worried about what I would think? I was like, where does
again,
that come
that's
from?
where the empathy comes in. You have to understand that, especially in the world we live in right now, nothing's guaranteed. And I hope that you didn't take it as a slight against yourself. Be aware that people who are in marginalized groups are under attack and feel defensive.
Like, hey, I'm always like, I'm just glad you found somebody to love, and somebody loves you.
Which is very sweet.
Why would I care?
So I really love that. I feel like we do have some super chats I definitely want to get to. So I might call this an end for this particular call. But Jeff, I do want to say, you're in Texas. If you're close enough to the Austin area, you really should come hang out at the ACA library. We have a meetup, which I'll talk about in a second when I let you off the call. And come hang out with us. There's a lot of diversity in, I think, the experiences of people who I have met at the ACA. Like they don't all come from religious backgrounds, or if they do, it's not necessarily all the same religion. And it has broadened my understanding personally of people who are atheists and identify as atheists, because I'm still comparatively a baby atheist compared to a lot of people. And I would say come hang out with us, Jeff, if you can.
So
we'll get on the Discord.
What is it again? The library?
Yes. So the ACA library, and there's actually, if you go to meetup.com, you can look up Atheist Community of Austin, and you'll see events there.
Mm-hmm. Or you can go to www.atheist-community.org.
All right.
Okay. Yeah, I may try that. That's a good suggestion. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you for your call there, Jeff, and really appreciate your getting in with us. I'm just going to let you go. Oh, pardon me, I think we're having some slight technical issues.
Thank you.
But yes, thank you very much for calling in, Jeff. It's great to see your allyship. While we get things put together, we do have some patrons to thank. So if you want to get on board with the ACA, and I think we may have a Sofia back, but I'm still going to do these patrons. If you want to get on board with the ACA, and I don't mean on a boat, although that is happening, you can go to our Patreon, which is available at tiny.cc/PatreonTH, I believe. And if you give your hard-earned moolah to the ACA, we will thank you. And we'll thank you by calling you out on the show, because we have our top 5 patrons for this week. Some familiar names here. We have Dingleberry Jackson. Oh God, I hope I get to meet these people on the cruise. Oops, all singularity. That's a fantastic name. Devor Valjean, Kalevi Helveti, Left in the Leaves, and an honourable mention for Brainery. I hope I'm saying that right, Brainery. So yes, thank you very much for your contributions to the cause. We literally couldn't do what we do without you guys. If you want to get on that list, then get on that Patreon. Know what I mean?
Yeah, and I know that they're actively doing things to ramp up what's on the Patreon for folks, so it'll be exciting to see what comes out there. Sorry for dropping. I'm back. I know you missed me for that 30 seconds. Thank you, Jamie, for stepping in.
I was so panicked, I completely did all of the bad thing in my brain and body, I guess.
I'm sorry that if I cause panic attacks. My presence, I am hoping, is soothing. So here I am back.
You are a balm for the soul. Not that we believe in such things.
Yeah. So thank you so much for going over the patrons. I also want to do just a few quick announcements here. One is we want to hear from you. We want to know what you liked, what you thought was effective, and most importantly, what you thought we could do better. This is about like any show, really. But in particular, I'd love to have feedback that isn't just telling me to repent. So email us at tv@atheist-community.org. and let us know what the thoughts are that you have that you would like to share. If you're in the Austin area, as we mentioned to Jeff, follow us on Meetup. So meetup.com to keep up with community events. So you can see what's going on at tiny.cc/ACA Meetup. That's tiny.cc/ACA Meetup. There's Philosophy Under the Stars, which sounds super cool. I've actually never been, but it is my goal at some point during this year to actually get there. It looks really cool. Game nights, which I have been to, which are super fun and can be very loud, which I always think is a good thing when you're playing games and getting to hang out with other people and more. So this will include, anything happening at the ACA library. If you're just in the Austin area, you can just check up on the meetup, even if you're just traveling through, because we'll have people who stop by as they're just visiting. And that's super exciting for us. I'm a nerd and I get excited about that.
Yeah, we're open most weekends as well when the shows are being shown, so we can have little watch parties. You'll probably see a couple of people there of a Sunday. Drop by.
Yeah. Weekly watch parties are, I think, a relatively new thing at the Free Thought Library on Sundays for live viewings of Talk Heathen and the Atheist Experience. So that's every Sunday, doors open at noon. It is a great place for building community. And so, yeah, if you are a lonesome atheist out there, then you should definitely come and hang out with us, even if you're not a lonesome atheist, if you just are a cool person who wants to hang out with other cool people, because we are super cool.
Speak for yourself. I made 87% of cringe by weight.
87% cringe by weight. I know I keep bringing up the fact that I'm pregnant, but at this point, when you're this pregnant, you're just kind of like, that's like your existence. So yeah. I'm a good portion of me as another person right now, which is weird.
When you're in the bath, you're a submarine, so that's fine.
Yeah, well, I went swimming yesterday and I was just like, I'm a big fat manatee. I love it. It's too hot. I don't care about anything. So, it kind of, I feel like I do. People describe pregnancy sometimes as this mystical, metaphysical thing, and I'm like, I feel more and more animal as time goes on. I'm just gonna go squat in the woods and push.
It is disturbingly biological.
Yeah. It's true. And it's kind of a relief to just be like, you know what? I don't have to act particularly human all the time. You can also always send us a super chat with a question or a comment. We read as many as we can. Speaking of which, we just got another super chat. Jamie, would you feel like reading that one out? Or would
I
you
will give it a go.
Okay.
We got a super chat in from Ben Nine Lives, $4.99. Nice to see you, Jamie and Sophia on a Sunday afternoon. Nice to acknowledge your existence as well. I can't see you, but then again, if we were in the same room, it would still be the same thing. So thank you very much for the super chat. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I appreciate that you like us. You really like us.
You owe us, or no, you don't.
I am not a particularly awe-inspiring person right now. I just feel like the need to explain. I'm glad you can't be nearer to me at this particular moment. There's definitely some coffee breath going on, and I'm wearing one giant like cat suit that's made for pregnancy. So I really look like I'm like the saddest gymnast in the world. You know,
both of us in the same boat. It's less and more.
Yeah, we're like, oh, you guys stay in those caves away from us. Sorry, I feel like for some reason we're both, I think, quite a bit self-deprecating, and so I feel like we could just go on in this like roasting ourselves.
Well, here's the thing, though. I am incredibly silly about a lot of things, which means that I can save my seriousness for when it is worth it. So when nothing a person could comment on a video or send in on like a comment or a voicemail or whatever is going to get to me, because I take the mick out of myself all the time. But if you come in and start trying to talk about important things, you're going to get serious, Jamie. So don't take this self-deprecating japery as a sign of a lack of seriousness. I will just take it out when it's necessary.
Speaking of screenshots and voicemails and things that people can send, we do have some for each of us that people have commented that we have here that we can react to. So are you ready for some of that there, Jamie?
Please.
All right. So I think I really like this one. It's number 9. You get way longer comments than I do, by the way, which is really interesting. So number 9 says, if there was no Bible, it doesn't exempt anybody from the laws of God, just like the laws of nature. Just because I don't know the speed limit doesn't make man's law go away. All of us are sinners needing a savior. That's it in a nutshell. So being hung up on some verses or a story that doesn't ring right in your ear is moot. You need blood atonement through King Jesus. And this is apparently,
Probably on me, because a lot of my cold opens, I quote Bible verses and go, this doesn't make sense, Chief. That's a false equivalence right there. The laws of nature are testable and constant. Like, I don't need to know that gravity is a thing to not jump off a cliff, right? The laws of man and the laws of God, as was in our quote, are constructed things. If you don't know them and no one tells you about them, they are not self-evident. So I don't know where that person's coming from. Yes, you will still get collared if you break the speed limit, but there's no intrinsic way to know what the speed limit is unless there are signposts. And if the Bible is your signpost, then I'm going to read the signs. And if I interpret the signs incorrectly and you prosecute me on that, like the speed limit is 55, the only way I'm going to misinterpret that is if I think it's kilometers an hour or miles an hour and it's the other way around. And I could possibly plead ignorance on that. But that's something we can argue about. So the text is important. It's where you get these laws from. They're not intrinsic.
Yep. I love that. I think that I'm going to actually hit you with another one right now because it fits so well into what you were just saying about how you open the show.
Bring it, yes.
Let's see, on this list, it is number 12. It says, what kind of people go out of their way to start a call-in show? I'm going to rephrase this by announcing they do not believe in something. What kind of person does that, Jamie?
Kind of person who is on the daily, on the reg, affected by people who do believe these things. That's the point. My disbelief isn't the problem. It's that people are making decisions and taking actions based on their beliefs. And those actions and decisions affect me and people I care about. So yes, I am going to argue them, and you can't stop me. Also, I didn't create this show. I came in quite late. I've been here for 28 years.
I sort of love that, like, what kind of people, and they're like commenting on a YouTube video, and I'm like, I don't, probably a very similar kind to who you are. That one I always like, I'm like, yeah, I don't do it at like brunch, you know, I don't just walk in and I'm like, by the way, I'm an atheist. Although I'm sure some people feel like I do. Let's be real.
Oh, yeah.
I currently attend a Christian university. And so I think that there's a level of people being like, like why does she talk about this all the time? But, you know, I feel like the context makes sense. I'm sure people get annoyed at me with it, but don't hang out with me, I guess. I don't know.
Just before we go on, we have had another superb chat, and I'm going to call them superb because anyone who sends in a super chat is superb. And this one's in from Miranda Rensberger for $5. Awesome show so far. Thank you both for being here. Thank you for being here and watching and contributing. A regular contributor and member, Miranda Rensberger. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm
just going to have a sip from my giant jug of theist tears here because my mouth's a little dry. Pardon me, but if you want to cue something else up, I'm all ears and eyes.
Well, I think I might take a couple of like directed at me. Mine are way shorter than yours. I feel like people leave you essays and they leave me like very short things. Admittedly, I will say I'm a little so this one, number one, it's in all caps. Apparently I was talking about keeping religion out of government. And so this one is basically yelling, so should we get rid of the Bible's commandments out of the laws? And I'm like, maybe. I don't. My first thought is like, do they work? Are they helpful? Like,
are they in the laws?
Well, and I'm like, no other gods before me. Is that a law you think I should have to follow? So that's kind of weird. If it was even in there, honor thy mother and father. Like, no, I don't know that every mother and father, as you have pointed out previously, needs to be honored. I feel like putting that as part of the law is a pretty bad idea. I guess you could say things like coveting your neighbor's property. Like if you steal it, I guess don't do that. But I look at this and I'm like, I shrug.
Yeah, I mean,
does it work?
There are a couple of overlaps between law and the commandments, like thou shalt not kill. But then again, I live in Texas. It's a stand your ground state. There are circumstances where you absolutely can kill legally, and it's fine. Mm-hmm. So, even that doesn't track. And I've never been arrested on grand disrespecting my dad. That's not a thing.
Yeah. So
fuck you, Dad. You go to jail. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, this is like a very impassioned response to something where I'm like, I don't think I'm arguing anything close to that because I don't think it's really relevant to anything that I'm saying. But maybe, I don't know, depends on the commandment. Like, I think that I probably am very frustrating to some people because I'm just like, it depends is a very common answer for me. It depends. I don't know. And then I love this one because it is one of the most condescending things I've ever read in my life. And I don't know if this is like a weird kink of mine or something, but it's number 5. It says, you are a great theologian. When did you become one? It's not good that man should be alone. God made a woman for a helpmeet. Both ate the apple and both received punishment. A lot of women do not have great pain in childbirth. Okay? You just need to study a little more than jump on your bandwagon. Whatever, grammar's fine. What you are doing, God is against it, yet you are still alive. Why? God is long-suffering, waiting for you to come to him. You have a choice to make. Because apparently I was criticizing Paul for blaming all of women for what Eve did. So first of all, I actually went to a Christian university and got enough credits in theological areas that I could have done a double major. I just didn't because I'm lazy and didn't like filling out paperwork. I was a Christian at the time. And so even though I'm not a theologian, I have certainly stepped into that pond a little bit. And I feel like this very condescending, like, you're a great theologian. I'm like, I love it. I don't know why. I don't know the gender of the person who wrote this one, but I can hazard a guess. I also look at it and think, which women don't experience pain in childbirth? Have you thought about the physical reality of what's happening? Last time I gave birth, because this will be my second time for some wacky reason, my hips expanded by like 2.5 full inches. Like, the actual bone structure is different now. And so sometime during my 16-ish hour slog, which is not bad compared to most people, or compared to many women I personally know, my bones changed. That's a pretty epic thing to go through. I don't really understand how that would happen without any pain. Are you talking about epidurals? If so, yeah, I guess.
I was about to say that the only surcease from this suffering inflicted by God is the ingenuity of humans.
Yeah, thanks, science. Don't know what that has to do with God or Paul, but it certainly isn't really gonna help me. They just sort of say women are created to be a helpmeet. My husband is
very
also
condescending. Yeah,
it is, and my husband's also an atheist. So what would I be helping him with? Does this count? If I'm advocating for something that we both believe? I was, ironically, when I was in the church, wasn't allowed to talk a lot. Now that I'm an atheist, people seem a little more open to it. And so I'm like, I tried. I gave it the good old college try to be a good Christian girl. Didn't work out. Too loud. So there is that.
There is a broader and more disturbing discussion on the role of women in traditional Christian and traditional other Abrahamic faiths. I've heard stories about not just Christians, obviously, but Muslims and Jews, and there's lots of just the worst. But it's not even the big stuff; it's the small stuff. It's the fact that just women are just less important across the board, and I know, present company included, way too many women who are just superb. Like singularly excellent people who should be listened to, who are important, who are more important than me by echelons, And so they're like, hey, you've got ovaries, you shouldn't speak. Oh, you identify as a woman, you shouldn't speak. Fuck off.
Yeah, so I guess me talking is against God, and I have a choice to make. I'm going to let you know, like, I made that choice already. Like, I have made a choice. You're right. I really tried to choose the Bible. I really tried to choose the Christian God, and I believed in it wholeheartedly before just kind of looking at it a little bit more clearly and realizing that the angle from which I was looking at everything was coloring every assumption I made, everything I studied. And when I tried to reapproach things and learn more, the choice became very clear. I can't choose something that doesn't exist anymore. And so...
Just to say, God, if you have a complaint about your blessed daughter, Sofia here, you can direct it to us, or you can just email us at tv@atheist-community.org. We'll get round to it when we feel like it.
God can comment on the YouTube video, I think.
Can do that too.
Right? Does he have fingers? Anyway, sorry. Some practical things that maybe I just don't understand. All right, I do want to bring in, we are reaching the end of our time here, and I want to bring in Kelley here. So Kelley has backed us up on the show tonight, and we appreciate him so much. So thank you, Kelley Laughlin, for helping out. Let's see Kelley and bring him on. Hey, Kelley. Oh, we can't hear you.
You know what? And Greg warned me not to unmute my mic when I came on. That's so funny. Thank you, Sofia. I really appreciate that. And I wanted to say, Jamie, you just nailed it when you were talking to John from Texas, when you said that he kind of picks and chooses what bits of science he believes in. So I thought that was a totally nailing the subject right there. And Sofia, you know, a lot of people tell me that I need help. So if you're available.
We should just do a show just being like, let's talk about feelings. Atheists have feelings.
It's all we have because there's no external force telling us how to feel or what to do. And if you need the threat of an external daddy saying, love me or burn to be a good person, you're not a good person.
You're not a good person. That said, I did like Abraham Piper is the son of John Piper, the fundamentalist preacher, and he is a non-religious person now and has a great TikTok that I follow. And he mentions, he's like, if you need the threat of God, essentially, if you need to believe you'll burn in hell to like not rape people, maybe don't take God away from those folks. Maybe they should keep God. Maybe that's a good thing. I don't So I was like, that's,
you know, it's funny though, that almost everybody who says that, when you ask them, well, would you give God, if you found out tomorrow God wasn't there, would you go out and rape and murder? All of them tell me, no, I wouldn't. You know, so and I always thought that was weird. It's like they say God is keeping them from doing it. And yet when it comes down to it, God doesn't really matter if they're still not going to go out and do it. So it seems to me that morality is something maybe inbred and not taught to us.
Yeah, it's almost like it's something that also is malleable and changes over time and can be reassessed. But who am I to say?
Yep, that is possible. Did you have a favorite caller today, or somebody that you feel that you really something you want to respond to there, Kelley?
You know, I my favorite caller today was John from Texas. He really was. I thought the conversation was really good. I don't feel like we got through to him very well, but I thought it was a good conversation until the very end when he felt like he was cornered and started doing the ad hominem attacks. So
yeah. It's not the first time that a religious man has acted like I'm talking way more than he is for some reason. Anyway,
it happens. You know, one of the things, if you're going to be a host here, you have to be pretty what's the word? I'm pretty sturdy to accept stuff like that. You're going to get it all the time. So in the negative, like the negative comments, right? You just got to learn to let them go off your back like water on a duck, right?
I do feel like the fact that everyone gets them makes it kind of like all these other people I respect and like a lot are getting very similar negative comments, similar reactions. And so it's hard to take super personally for me, which I'm grateful for, you know, the community of hosts and people who are also experiencing these things, you know?
Mm-hmm. When I want negative comments, I usually wear my rainbow tie and that'll get me a few.
I love that.
Almost always, every time I wear it.
So we actually have a couple like last minute calls that have come in.
I'm thinking line 5.
I'm sorry?
I'm thinking Caleb.
I think that's a good idea. All right. So we're actually going to bring on kind of a couple last minute folks here before we end. Again, thank you so much, Kelley, for being back up.
Thanks for having me.
I'm sorry?
I said, thanks for having me.
Of course. I think you've been on this longer, so it feels weird for you to thank me, but so let's bring on Caleb, who identifies as he, him, is from Ohio, and asks a really good question. What evidence would it take for the host to believe in God? So yeah, Caleb, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
I have a real simple answer.
All right.
I would need to get unambiguous empirical evidence. That's it. Unambiguous empirical evidence.
What would that be for you?
All right.
I don't know what that would be, honestly. But I mean, you know if something is unambiguous, and you know if it's empirical. You can test it with your senses, and if there's only one explanation for it, it's unambiguous. So I don't know what the exact evidence would be, but it would have to meet those two criteria.
Do you believe in any? Do you believe in anything like by definition that would be supernatural, like something that is beyond the material universe?
Nope.
Or something?
Nope.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some atheists do. Seems like all of us do not.
Here on the program, you don't?
Or just the three of us that are responding to your question.
Yeah, these are our individual responses. We don't represent the entirety of atheism, nor even the entirety of the ACA. Obviously, the line that you've probably heard a lot is, we don't know, but God should. I know that's not particularly satisfying. I can give you examples of things that would make me question. The big one is like my vision spontaneously becoming perfect. That is physically impossible as far as I'm aware. But here's the question for you, Caleb. Let's say that did happen. Let's say that right now, my eyes are healed. How can you tell it was God?
Well, I don't know, because there are very specific circumstances in, like, with Jesus. But I was going to ask you before we went on to that, could I try and give you some evidence for God? I'm not saying I'm going to be able to give you good evidence, but I just thought maybe I could.
Yeah, I really like Jamie's question, but go ahead with what you feel is evidence. What do you got?
Do we
You may have a delay. Can you hear us, Caleb?
I think we may have lost his nibs.
Oh, we did. All right. Well, definitely. I'm going to go ahead and say, like, hey, we're about at time today, and I feel like I appreciated your thought. If you know, like your thought here, I would have loved to hear what you thought evidence to be. You also felt super respectful. Like, I'm not saying it'll convince you, but here's what I got. So I would say definitely call in again, Caleb. I would like to hear what your evidence is.
Super duper call in, and call in earlier. Don't leave it to the end of the show.
I
Get
know.
in
Call in earlier. We want to talk to you. Yeah, and particularly if you're like super nice. And yeah, for me, I didn't answer the question, but real quick, I feel like I would reverse what helped me leave Christianity. And I'm like, if we were to find and substantiate that the text of the Bible was actually remotely close to the time, the area, that there was a reason for actually choosing these texts that ended up being put in the Bible, because the Council of Nicaea is kind of a lie, which was big for me. I think that would at least make me start to think, oh, maybe there's more. Like, maybe this is something I should reconsider. I would certainly think about it because it was such a big thing for me emotionally. So, yeah, but Caleb, I would wonder what you'd make of that. I would love to hear your thoughts and evidence. But at this point, we are done for today. And so remember, because Objectively Dan didn't host the show this week, the prompt for this week is, why is God so obsessed with sex? Wrong answers only. Do comment down below in the comments of this video and let us know what your answer is. And tune in at the beginning of next week. We will read off the top 3 answers. So we also always do this little thing called Love Rings, which I forgot the last time I hosted, but I'm going to remember this time. We're sending you love. Love Rings should show up at some point, even if not. There we go. Yay, Love Rings, yay. I always get nervous about it. I'm like, okay, either I'm just doing something really weird or, they'll happen. So sending out Love Rings. We do love people. Definitely, we will be having an after show. Check out the Discord, which is tiny.cc/ACD Discord. If you don't believe this is your community, and we do appreciate you being here. If you don't believe, my goodness. All right. If you don't believe this is your community, we appreciate you being here. And if you do believe, we don't hate.
We're just not convinced.
Just that convinced.
Yeah.
We want the truth, so watch Truth Wanted live Friday at 7 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTTW and call into the show at 512-991-9242 or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/calltw.